Welcome in to the latest episode of the Need for Seeds College Basketball Podcast, presented by the Pregame.com Podcast Network. I'm your host, real_G Warner, joined by at Big East Ben. We were 20-11 with at least one push in there, but 65% so far this season. Ben is catching up on me. I'm now 10-5-1 on our podcast, are giving our best bets, which come end of show. He's improved to 10-6. I had a half a point loser after a late three that pushed my previous best bet. So hoping that the last few seconds will improve a little bit. UCLA up 11 in the second half. Though it certainly got a lot closer than that down the stretch. Big East Ben did a Missy Elliott. He went against Northwestern and then flipped it and reversed it and won with Northwestern, I think by your own half of a point. So
Thanks, Nick.
thanks, Nick. Which
Nick
Nick?
Martinelli. All that guy does is mid-range game winners.
Yeah, he's pretty phenomenal, pretty hard to defend, and will be great in a YMCA for as soon as his Northwestern career ends, unless they really need him in Turkey or something like that. So on this episode, we're gonna go through five of the biggest games on this weekend's card, specifically on Saturday, as projected by Big East Ben, especially because Sunday everyone's afraid of the NFL Super Bowl. You might have heard of it. And I'm sure there's plenty of great coverage all over the Pregame.com podcast network about the NFL. Plus, I have my own on the Betting the Pitch network if you're looking for more NFL content as we round out the season. But like I said, we're going to go through the top five college basketball games. We'll give out promo codes to save you some money at pregame, and we'll deliver some winners end of show. So we'll start in the first game on Ben's list, the one he was most excited for us to talk about, and that is Texas Tech. Let me make sure I have this number in front of me. Because we're doing this a little early, so I might have to project this one. So let's go. Let's find some lines that exist already. As I scramble, we're 0 for 2. Let's start with in the Big East, because that game should start early, even though it's technically played in Middle America. We'll start with Marquette, 1.5 point underdogs at Creighton, total 145.5 points.
These are teams going in completely opposite directions. Creighton is red hot. They have covered 9 straight games, dating back to the where they covered by the hook against Marquette at Fiserv, where I put 5 units on after going on tilt, and I've been slowly trying to make that up through the rest of the month. So Creighton's been cooking. Marquette didn't look great against the weak first half of the conference schedule, and that is coming. That is coming to bear fruit with their recent performances against the other Big East
Chickens
big
are
boys.
coming home to roost, you're looking for.
The chickens are coming home to yes, you're right. Um, Again, we talked about that UConn game, the frustrating, mathematically improbable UConn domination last Saturday, and then Tuesday, going to Madison Square Garden and getting absolutely pushed around by St. John's.
We haven't talked about this because I know you were watching it actually later than I was, 'cause I watched it live, and I had this whole list of things that I was waiting to send, waiting to send, waiting to send. I think I sent it, but I never got a reply. So now it's our time to rehash how that game went live. Well, I guess technically we'll be live to some of you when you hear it on a recorded line or recorded version, but live, we're doing it now live.
St. John's is not a real basketball team. St.
Oh,
John's is a football team masquerading as a basketball team, similar to the team down on College Station. Yes, they are the Texas A&M of the Big East. They might be a worse shooting team than Texas A&M. I haven't looked at the numbers and compared the two, but
close.
yeah, they have enough bricks to build a shelter for the homeless, so I can get your mother and sister out of my house, to quote Woody Harrelson and White Men Can't Jump.
I was gonna say my mom and my sister live in different places. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, they shot a million more free throws than Marquette. I don't know what the final offensive rebound differential was, but it was plus 15 in St. John's favor at one point. The only reason Marquette stayed in the game was because St. John's was missing all their free throws, making Rick Pitino inside want to kill himself, but outside saying that, oh, it's okay, we'll make the next one. So St. John's not a real basketball team. I'm very excited to watch the game tonight against the Huskies at Gamble. UConn doesn't have any guards, so it's going to be a really interesting game on $2 Miller Lite night. Coach Dan Hurley is already making excuses, telling the fans the beer might have to be $1, seeing how all of his guys are limping around. Way to get
Uh,
out ahead of it, Dan, you
you're saying
loser.
Hassan Diarra needs a $2 beer before the game starts?
um, so yeah, back to Marquette Crate. I mean, obviously the
Hold
chai.
on, hold on. I'm not ready to leave that one yet because I gave you a whole list of things. To me, Marquette, of course, yes, agreed, had a tough start to the season, and things have certainly turned up. Pretty brutal for schedule makers to give them UConn at home, defending national champions, then at St. John's, and then at Creighton. I mean, to me, that seems absolutely insane. But I guess for TV ratings, and you want to avoid the NFL, so when the NFL takes a week off, let's fill the schedule as many teams, make our sport as relevant as possible. Maybe the NBA could learn from that because their ratings are down incredibly. I think 20% I heard recently. And then the local team across the street from me traded their best player for a bag of donuts. So that was interesting. But to me, I feel like your points are taken. So I noticed St. John's offensive rebounding when they really crushed Xavier on the road, probably a month or so, half or so ago. And to me, it seemed like when you're putting a four, like a perimeter playing four man against St. John's, you'd have a lot of trouble with that because we saw that with Joplin, who I thought was just completely out of the game at certain times, made a couple important plays, but he's probably, as you've noticed, my biggest question in that starting lineup. I don't think you change that for whoever you play. It might just mean that that's a tough matchup for Marquette to deal with. Cam Jones getting in foul trouble, that never works
He
out.
keeps doing. He's done it every other game since the dating game. I don't get what his deal is. They're stupid perimeter fouls. It drives me insane.
Well, and what happens, I think, is Marquette's offense is so structured around Cam Jones that if he's in foul trouble, even if he's like, to me, I wonder if going forward, even if he's not in foul trouble, but he's close to that, like he's has to be so cautious with like every time he possesses the ball because his game is going to the rim. And unfortunately, while charges are not called at the same rates that they used to, which was fraudulent and made Duke so good at basketball, though it doesn't seem like they really worried about that this year. But that's to me the limitations with Marquette. And not only did they kind of sleepwalk a few games, and I mean losing at home to Xavier, like I don't think that's a horrible loss by any means, but Marquette certainly took care of business of an early season schedule that was very, very soft. But we've seen two straight losses, and I wonder from your as a Marquette follower, fan, seeing them live every season at least once what your thought is on the mental state of Marquette because they really haven't had. I mean, they had two road losses at Iowa State and at Dayton before non-conference play wrapped up. Played a really hard schedule and basically passed it with fine colors, beating Maryland away, beating Purdue by 1 million, and beating what's turned out to be a decent Georgia team, though I think they will eventually get weaker. Plus that Wisconsin win that you attended. I wonder now that there's a little bit of troubled water because literally they responded with 3 wins after Xavier, with probably zero tournament teams besides maybe Villanova, with a home win there. But now the schedule's gotten tough. They've lost two in a row. What do you think because Shaka Smart, I remember him, he used to put a plus sign in his hand to always remember to be positive, but that seemed to change when he left Texas, which I think is smart because you just can't you can't just say, oh, we just got to make shots every game. I wonder what you think about the temperament of Marquette right now heading into this matchup in Omaha because it's going to be like before the season started. I figured other than at Connecticut, I don't know what game you would be more afraid of on that schedule, in the conference at least than at Creighton.
There's no other game. Listen, the big stat that always blows everyone's mind with Shaka Smart is that over the last 3 seasons, he's only started 8 guys. The 5 guys who start now, Kolek, Iguodaro, and then Omex Prosper, who's I think he's getting some run with the Mavericks now. He'll be getting more run with the Mavericks now that they fired
Yeah,
the same guy who plays this position, but not fired, traded.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, same thing. He was fired in some form or fashion. Keep going.
so I think there has to be a mix-up of the rotation. We already touched on David Joplin. Ben Gold has also just been worthless. Ben Gold 6'11", 6'11", 6'11" Ben Gold has not grabbed a rebound in his last 50 minutes of gameplay. So there
Great
needs
for
to
your
be
center.
what?
Not great for your center.
Not great for the center. So I think there needs to be a switch up in the rotation. Did you notice the amazing performance out of Zayd Lowry in the St. John's game?
I noticed his incredible performance and then him leaving a 3-point shot that was open late, short. That if he makes that, maybe Marquette wins the game because they did pull ahead and take a lead late. And we're kind of, that was, I mean, you can't expect a lot from him, especially after an incredible first half that kept him in it. But like, if he makes that shot, I mean, we might be talking a very different game here with Marquette having won an upset or whatever you call it at St. John's.
Yeah, he needs to get way more minutes. He needs to get more Jobs minutes, and then Gold's minutes have to go more to Royce Parnham. Parnham, I think, is just as good of a shooter as Ben Gold, and he's way more physical inside, can actually rebound, and is a way better, bigger body,
I mean,
thickness wise
that's what
than
you
Ben
want.
Gold.
I think like guards win in March, but you need, as Alabama proved last year, literally just put guys on the floor for 5 fouls and it will eventually work out inside. And the young Marquette bigs, I mean, I've been impressed even by Hamilton too. I feel like there's been some good showing. I mean, maybe you're
I'm high on Hamilton. The rest of the Marquette body is not as high as I am, but I think he can be good.
okay, keep going.
So yeah, I just think there needs to be a switch up the rotation. I don't know if it means blowing up the starting rotation, but at least a reallocation of minutes going forward for the to save the season.
I feel like
Um,
changing the starting lineup probably signals a panic that I don't think Shaka wants to send that wave, but I think you can kind of hide that and how much run
yeah.
you're giving people. Parham gets in there, maybe a little more Owens, of course, Lowry. So, I mean, I'm intrigued to see kind of where this goes. As you both know, or if you've been listening to this podcast the entire season, you know that we are on Marquette to win it all, and I still am not concerned about them getting the tournament, obviously, or getting a good seed. I just obviously want them to get the best seed possible because if you somehow get a one, you are almost guaranteed a next round, and that's
Well,
the
we're cooked for it. I think we're cooked for a top two at this point. I think we're looking at three or four,
well.
unless they go to Gamble and win, and then take care of St. John's and win the Big
There's a
East
long
tournament.
way to go, I think, where but there's not a lot of room for error, especially in a weaker Big East. Okay, so Creighton 1.5 point favorites to Marquette totals 145.5.
So, like I said, to lead off this analysis before we went Marquette heavy, Creighton has covered a million games in a row. They're playing great basketball. Their 24-year-old point guard, Stephen Ashworth, who's taking photos with his wife and baby, that's going all over Twitter, and he's getting people are saying, "Oh, this is." Uh, I saw a tweet. It was like, "Hey, parents, this is who your 17-year-old is competing against with for scholarships." And it's like, dude, Hunter Dickinson is the same age as this guy. Like, lay off. He does look a lot older though. Um,
He
the
also banking. This is the same guy that's ruining all your bets on a Saturday morning by banking shots in from the corner off the corner of the backboard, which I didn't know is physically possible.
still have no idea how that went in. Defied physics. Um, Griffin, I've been rebranding myself
Hold on,
as
I
the
know how it went in. I was on the other side. Keep going.
what?
I know how it went in because I had the other side. Keep going.
Um, I've been rebranding myself as the Totals King. I've won nine now totals in a row. All hail the Total King. Totals
All
King.
hail the Total King.
Long live the Totals King.
I wonder if you could fit that in your handle. Keep going.
So I'm not going to fade Marquette, even though you probably should. I'm going to go under 144 and a half in this game. Marquette unders are 7-2 away from the five serve form. Created under 7-5 at the Chi Health Center.
I'll even give you 145.5 right now. I'll take Creighton 1.5 point favorites. I feel like we need to see the Marquette train get back on the tracks. Two losses, not horrible ones. At home was not great, but to a really good team that's won the last two national titles. And on the road at a team that got away with murder for 40 minutes or however long the game lasted. Felt like,
That flagrant was so bullshit, dude. Like, I
I mean,
hate James Breeding. If
yeah,
I was in a room with Obama, Hitler, and James Breeding and had a bullet with two guns, I would shoot James Breeding twice.
wow, that's saying something, especially after the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz just last week. So I'll go Creighton -1.5. Ben's going under 145.5. And we'll move to another game that we have a line for, and that is Michigan State, 7.5 point favorites in a early start to Oregon. Totals 148, noon tip-off. So that means 9 a.m. Oregon, Eugene, Oregon time.
Well, I assume Oregon has stayed. So they played Michigan on Wednesday,
Yeah, they're staying
and
out
actually
there.
they stayed out there.
I listened
Uh,
to Dana Altman press conference because unfortunately Fox always takes down the games I want to watch. And he was saying how he was perplexed at the scheduling, how he had the early start on Saturday after a Wednesday game and then had to play Tuesday. But we just got to play what the schedule has given us. I'm sure behind the scenes he's trying to play that up as loud as possible, but there might be some limitations with the talent on his team.
Yep. I mean, both teams have been struggling. Oregon more so lost five of six. I mean, they've covered Griffin now two game. They're 3-9 against the spread in Big East play,
Big
in Big Ten play.
The cover
Um,
last game. I mean, they might join the Big East. I might have missed it, but that'd be pretty wild. Oregon teams in the Big East.
yeah, I'm sure the football team would love
A
that.
non-Catholic. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Michigan, meanwhile, 7-3 against the spread in the Big East. Jesus Christ, the Big Ten. um,
Big
I
Ten.
mean, we talked about Michigan State shooting struggles, 350th in the country in 3-point shooting. They've got a little 4% bump in Big Ten play.
Hmm.
They also defend the three ball very well, 27%. That's number one in the Big Ten. Um, 7.5 is a little too rich. That's what you have at 7.5.
7.5.
That's a little too rich for my blood. I'm going to go under on this one. Oregon does a pretty good job of defending the fast break and making teams score in the half court, which Michigan State is not effective at. I already cited Michigan State, 11th rated defense in the country. Both teams pretty good at defensive rebounding. Michigan State's a good offensive rebounding team, but like I said, limitations to score in the half court. I am going to go under
148.
148.
148. I'll
148.
go, I'll lay the points to Michigan State. I feel like getting swept in LA is not as bad as it looks, especially because they were in that game and could have certainly won it despite being down, like I said, 11 points the second half to my best bet UCLA -2.5, which of course won by two. I think the number's bigger than I'd like, of course, and I wonder if Oregon will ever employ a zone. If there's ever a time to do it, yes, it's on the road, the scary thing, but Michigan State cannot shoot threes besides maybe Jaden Akins, and UCLA basically did everything they could to not let him shoot threes, and basically were like, okay, everyone else can. The big question to me, though, is if Oregon's not going to play a zone, Dana Altman mentioned that they just couldn't stop anything inside, and maybe he was playing Nate Biddle too much. So that tells me a lot of Supreme Cook against a front line of stud big men that can all score and all kind of have different type of post moves. So I think that all kind of adds.
I don't know. Frankie Fiddler's a stud.
I would say Zapala and Cooper and
Booker.
Jackson Kohler. They're not usually playing one of the 7 footers or 6'10ers or Fiddler is he's a small ball four to me, but was I think leading the Big Ten in free throw shooting and then split like every time went to the line at UCLA, but still was not enough for a cover. We'll move now since we've covered two games so far in a large amount of time. Let's see if I can find a spread on, I guess BetOnline's coming out their line pretty late today. I guess they were a little
I
nervous.
got I got Arizona -3, total 149.5.
Arizona -3, which is what I was expecting. Total's 139.5, you said?
49.5.
149.5. Go ahead.
Two of the hottest teams in the Big 12. I said after that Iowa State miracle win, and that was the worst thing to happen to Arizona. Caleb Love getting that shot to drop and thinking he's God's gift to mankind. I've been proven wrong. Beat Arizona State and BYU, both on the road. Did you catch into that Arizona State game with the headbutt?
I did not.
Caleb Love was just talking shit to the bench the entire game, and then finally at the end, BJ Freeman gave him a little on the noggin, and then the worser Hurley pulled off all his players after the game and then shake hands with Tommy Lloyd. It was very entertaining. uh,
Oh man, always expect the Hurley brothers to come in and say, you guys are behaving badly. But they did make a rule that if you talk shit to the bench, you get a technical every time in college basketball. So what a surprise they didn't do that because officials are forever the bane of my existence. Continue.
so these guys met up in Lubbock about a month ago. It was a 70-54 Texas Tech win. Both teams were miserable shooting the ball from three in that game. Texas Tech was 6 of 23. Arizona was 318. The aforementioned Caleb Love was 0 for 5 from three. Obviously, a different story at the McHale Center, but I mean, Texas Tech has sowed their oats on the road this season. The win over Houston might be the most impressive win of any team in the country, given that
Speaking of
their,
ref,
yeah, speaking of refs, given that their best player was ejected in the first, that happened in the first half, right?
the first 4 minutes,
First
yes,
one, yep, and their coach ejected. So,
same
and
time.
and they didn't let down at all.
Six
I mean,
free
they,
throws just handed to Houston on a silver platter. Continue.
yep. And they didn't, great letdown spot at home against Baylor, and they took care of business. So, um, listen, I think this Texas Tech roster is just way too talented. JT Toppin is questionable. I just want to call that out with an ankle injury. So keep an eye on that. But if he plays, I don't see Tech. I can see Tech winning this game. I've been high on Elijah Hawkins since I watched him last year at Minnesota. The guy does not turn the ball over. He is steady as they come. Chance McMillan is dynamic. Darian Williams is explosive. Um, so I'm gonna back the Red Raiders here. I think this Arizona team, even though they've had some success, again, that Iowa State game should not have been a win.
Hmm.
I think they showed their true colors against elite competition in the early part of the season. I'm gonna sell high on them and back Grant McCaslin's crew.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I think Texas Tech is very scary to me because they've really, to me, they were a play on at home forever, but then they've grown to too big of a favorite. The scaries, I mean, I backed them, I think maybe last season when they went to Houston, and I think they were like 12 or 13 win underdogs and looked like they might win the game and then ended up not even covering the spread. So I have not necessarily seen I haven't had a lot of success with them this season, but I think in one of the games I backed, JT Toppin was a surprise no show or DNP or not available for the game against Texas A&M way back when. I think it was one of my five best bet losers so far this season. And it's hard to pick against Arizona at home, but they have lost to Duke there. They should have lost to Iowa State, as you mentioned, somehow covered as a favorite in overtime. Wow. I guess Caleb Love is trying to get back in my good graces after all he's done to me over his career. I think the hard part for me though is going against a home court that should be nuts, should be electric. Texas Tech will be prepared for it, and so I think I agree with your interest in the 3 points on the road underdog. I'm just not. I'm trying to limit my exposure to road teams so far this season. So I'll go over 149 and a half in that matchup. Next on game on our list, we have, I think, two more left to go. Do you have a number for Florida and Auburn?
Auburn -9, total 155.5.
That's gigantic.
So I guess Walter Clayton is going to be back for this game. He missed the Vanderbilt game, Vanderbilt was like leading that entire game, and Florida ended up still winning by double digits. So that's impressive. Auburn has been pretty dominant um, with the return of Janai Broom.
Yep, he's good.
Won their last three by double digits. Absolutely stomped Oklahoma. What was that? I think it was like 98-70 was that final score in that game.
Poor Potter Mosier. Sorry, he couldn't run back cuts the whole game. Sad.
Porter Moser for the Indiana job.
I mean, for any job, he should be looking for the Southern Indiana job.
The IUPUI job.
I mean, I think they changed their name. They're now Indiana
IU Indy. Yeah, stupid.
Indianapolis. I mean, it was the most confusing name ever, but it was our confusing name, so I liked it.
So both teams, I mean, the offensive rebounding of both teams is fantastic. Florida's fourth in the country in offensive rebounding percentage. Auburn 22nd in the country in offensive rebounding. Both teams don't turn the ball over. Um, I think there's just going to be a lot of possessions. It's going to be an up-tempo game. I don't see the Florida, you know, inserting or, dominating
Asserting their
like
dominance.
asserting their dominance like they did against Tennessee. I think this will be a high scoring classic SEC game, similar to what we saw with Florida, Kentucky. I'm going to go, even though it's giant, I'm going to go over 155 and a half.
Yeah, I'm not so. I'm saying more so the spread is gigantic. I think
Yeah, I know.
the total is large, but I'm actually going to go with under that matchup. I just feel like we've seen Florida have some real problems away from home, and the blowout factor does make a difference. Where to me, I think you could see potentially some lower scoring outputs if there's no fouling at the end. So we'll go head to head on that matchup. Last but not least, another game I don't have, and it's Duke visiting Clemson. I was expecting to see a 5 point underdog. What do you got?
Give me 1 second.
Sure. I swear, I don't think we're
Wow.
that early.
Duke minus 7.5. Total is 134 and a half.
So is Duke so good that we don't even want to fade them away from home, huh?
Hey, if Duke is going to lose a game in ACC play, it's going to be this game. It's going to be this game. I don't think they're going to lose at the Dean Dome. If Duke is going to drop a game and
You sure
essentially
about that?
the new West Coast Conference, aka the ACC,
Yeah.
it's going to be at Little John. So while Duke again has not lost since November 26th versus Kansas, there has been some struggles in there. They were in a tight one versus Wake Forest in the road on the road. They also struggled against NC State at home, and this Clemson team is talented. I mean, Shefflin's awesome. Chase Hunter, Chase Hunter can get is when he's on is one of the scariest guards on planet Earth. Um, Listen, Clemson's going to have to make some three balls in this one. Duke's interior defense is elite with Flag and Malulach. They're allowing teams to shoot 41% from the floor uh, inside the three-point arc, 43% in ACC's play. So that hasn't really dropped off when you account for the awesome conference that is the ACC.
Mm.
Clemson, though, shoots the ball from three at 38%. That they shoot it from three at 40% at home. Duke 3-point defense, a little middling. I'm going to back the Tigers here. I don't think this Duke team's running the table. Um, Give me Clemson.
Yeah,
Plus 7.5.
So Duke hasn't lost since November 26th on a neutral to Kansas, which to me was no, I guess they really choked up the Kentucky game, game three in the Champions Classic. Um, I think oh yeah, Kansas was in Vegas. I don't think I saw that one. But anyway, yeah, so they've won 16 straight games. That's pretty nice. But they're they're a list of belts on the wall. Oh my God. They got some really good wins at Syracuse, home to North Carolina, and the most overrated game in college basketball that hasn't been relevant for many years. NC State, Wake Forest, bubble team, Boston College doesn't even have a fan that attends. Miami's coach quit middle of the year. Notre Dame, they can't even win at Miami. Speaking of, I mean the list of the ACC, it's so far down, and I think that might give us some value to fade Duke when they have a gaudy record heading into the NCAA tournament. But I also think it's going to give us some more value on Clemson. We saw them make a deep run in the NCAA tournament last year. They're one of my favorite teams to back, though unfortunately with the ACC being as bad as it has been this year, they haven't had the free money minus threes at home on Clemson at all this year, unfortunately. But I was against Clemson last weekend, a tight game with NC State, which they were able to cover towards the end. I don't know that NC State really deserved it, and NC State is looking like a horrible team that somehow found its way that we saw them in the Final Four. I'll go Clemson 7.5 with you on that one. So it's time for our best bets coming end of show. As we do on each podcast, we're 65%. But before we get to that, Make sure you use the promo code CBB10. College basketball, Charlie Bravo Bravo 10, good for $10 off for all packages on the pregame.com website. Probably better to use, say, 50% on a $20 package or something like that. Though, of course, if you want to stick around and wait till you want to get our season long packages, there's sometimes we offer some percentage discounts. That's probably where you want to go there. But save $10. Try us out at Big East Ben or Griffin Warner or the real underscore G Warner across all social media platforms. And jump in with us this weekend. CBB 10, Charlie Bravo Bravo 10. So it's time for our best bets. We're 20 and 11, 65% so far this season with one push. Big East Ben is a half game back as we were both excelling at this point in the season. He's 10 and 6. 10 and 6, so 10 out of 16. He's 63% so far this season. Where are you going with your best bet, Big East Ben?
I'm going to the Octagon of Doom, baby. Octagon of Doom, Kansas State, 4.5 point dogs, hosting Kansas. Rivalry game. One coach can talk to God, the other coach can't. That coach is wearing lavender. Kansas has lost 2 straight games in this building. Kansas State is playing their best basketball of the season. Wins over West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Iowa State in Hilton, and then Arizona State on the road. They excel on the interior. They're fourth in the Big 12 in 2 point percentage defense. Kansas does not like to shoot threes. They're not going to make them on the road. Give me the Wildcats.
Eva, every man a Wildcat. And what's that number? Six, you
Four
said?
and a half.
4.5. Sorry. 4.5. Kansas State, 4.5 point underdogs at home to Kansas. I'm taking another big underdog. I'm not going past where we just landed on our favorite five pet bets from the Big East Ben list of games. I'm going with Clemson, 7.5 point underdogs. I think they're going to win. I think you're right. I think if there's ever a time for Duke to lose, it is here. And even if they do win, going to win by 8 points, that almost gets you outside of fouling range. Brad Brownell, it's amazing he was on the hot seat and had to go on a Sweet 16 run, beating a good Auburn team a few seasons ago to keep his job. He's been awesome. And there's a rumor that Cam Jones sleeps in Chase Hunter pajamas, but I don't want to put that out there too loudly. So that'll be it for our best bets in this episode. I was expecting a little bit more of a reaction from Matt Big East Ben, but I guess
I can't talk the way Cam's been playing since the calendar turned the conference play. I can't argue.
Chase Hunter is so good too.
The Chase, if you haven't yet, go watch the end of the South Carolina Clemson game. And it's one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen in my life, that performance.
ESPN Plus is pretty good at that sort of thing, and they're good at uploading things. I don't know that it's probably still up now because that was before conference play. But if it's out there, Chase Hunter, maybe that's what the Dallas Mavs are trying to do is tank the rest of the season so they get Chase Hunter in the draft. Probably not. But I think we'll see what happens. Use that promo code CBB10, Charlie Bravo Bravo 10 for $10 off for any package on the College Basketball Podcast. Exclusive to podcast listeners, available for 7 days. So you have until February 14th. But I wouldn't suggest getting that for your significant other as their Valentine's Day gift. So make sure you think about that. I've had horrible luck over my history with Valentine's Day. Either someone peed on the flowers, they didn't show up, or I don't know, all sort of things like that. There's been complaints from women in the past for me, but whatever. It is what it is. This year,
They didn't like the flowers, so they peed on them.
uh,
But it smelled like pee
my
when you
college
gave them to them.
girlfriend said it looks like a cat peed on these flowers the first time I sent her them. And then the next year I was like, okay, I got to do this for real. I talked to her friends. I got a flower shop recommendation, called that in, said, I'm going to be dead and I won't be able to pay the bill if you don't do this. And they said, oh, we got it. We'll give you a really nice, beautiful version. We'll deliver it right first thing in the morning. Well, I was living in New York at the time. She was in Houston and I got a text at like 10:30. He's like, did you forget? And I said, what? What do you mean, did I forget? He's like, it's Valentine's Day. I was like, I know it's Valentine's Day. She's like, well, I don't have anything. And this is like the most important thing in the world for, I guess, an office full of women to show off the flowers that I got her. And so I frantically call the flower shop and they say, oh, they're on the truck. They'll be there in the next 3 hours. And
3 hours.
I was like, it's already like noon. What are you talking about? And so they apparently they got to her right as she was about to leave for the day. And And then I was going out to flying down, and I missed my flight because a electrical wire fell on the train track when I was going to Newark Airport. And literally, I was just like, if I was smarter then, I would have been like, this is a sign that I shouldn't get on this flight. But had a nice weekend, and that was the end of that. But it was a good run, and I think I'm only doing chocolate from now on because worst case, I'll just eat it.
Good story. You got a Super Bowl pick?
I win a pool if the Eagles win, so I think I'm rooting very heavily in the Philadelphia direction, and I don't know necessarily that I can look past that. But I think Eagles as an underdog is of interest, but like of a there's so little candy to go against Patrick Mahomes. I'm kind of nervous about it. What about you?
Go Birds!
The Eagles fly on the wings of victory.